If it's 11 a.m. Eastern Time, it's the Hour of Empower, now brought to you by the Livestream Success Network. As you can see, the new logo on the top of the screen, moving up. And so happy to have a new individual who's never been here, Neil Flora, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, I apologize. Leslie Flowers, who you've seen here multiple times, is the Think and Grow Rich show on Fridays, the Mind Over Matter on Mondays. Got a new 12-week course rolling along. So a lot going on. Beginning of the year. This is a year for change. If you're going to do it, sooner the better. Get on a fast track that allows you to, maybe satisfy your passion. With that, Leslie, why don't you start the show?
Okay.
Share a little bit of an update, maybe a little bit about the word, maybe a little bit about Neil, and then we'll swing it over to Neil. And before we swing it, we've got Omar here from Zoom Party. Hey, good to see you, Neil and Leslie. Great people. See, another recommendation. Okay, Leslie.
Okay. So the word today is faith. Faith, right?
Faith.
It's a commonplace word, and yet, it's still sort of mysterious in many ways to us. We know what it is and what it's all about. And this is Mindset Saturday. So we meet here on Saturdays to take a look at that word and hear from the audience how they feel about faith. We will share what we know about faith and how to gain it. And so I thought that Neil would be a great person to have on this show. Neil is a neuro scientist and coach. So where I'm more mind, right, and mindset, he is also mindset, but he also branches out, although we likely will not do that today. But you should know that he knows a lot about the brain and what happens when we, for example, set and achieve a goal, which is one of the ways to build faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Neil, thank you for accepting Don's invitation, and share a little bit about you, what you do, and whatever comes to mind.
Yeah, well, thank you, Leslie, and thank you, Don. I'm really excited to be here. Leslie is somebody who's become a treasured friend and a confidant, and it's so amazing what you can find on LinkedIn. It's been the best investment of my time. If you see in the middle of my name, it says Neo. That is because, while I might approach life with some science bend, it really is more about the energy, the spiritual, those sorts of things. And my particular brand of what I do is I just work with people to help them be more fulfilled. And in that fulfillment, which is honestly much more spiritual than neuroscience, we can create so many other things from that frequency. So for me, faith is just such a grounding force in my life, right? It just grounds me. It gives me a solid place to stand. And don't we all just want that feeling of like, I have this primal feeling that I'm rooted to something, that I belong to something, that something bigger is holding me. That was my big shift in the beginning of last year, was moving away from holding on to your life to something holding me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great revelation. Nice introduction. We've got the audience that's starting out pretty strong. Like I say, we've got Omar here. Renadeb comes here almost every day from India. I only imagine what the time is there. Always says the same two comments every day. Waiting for the bigger comment coming up. Cynthia's here. I don't think I've seen you in a while, if at all. Welcome. Good to see you. Happy New Year back. Hope you get some valuable takeaways today. That's what we're here for. And faith means so many things to so many people in so many ways. I think there's a knowing or a believing in it, but I think the key element is acting on it, right? So, achieving it is a nice thing to do and having faith, but without action, it's going to be unrealized and totally unmanifested. So how much is that going to serve anybody? You know, to know what you could have done and didn't, it's better probably not to even know anything. So with that, Renadeb comes back with the other word for faith is God. You know, and everything, and that's why we pick a word, has different context, different application. And so no one word means just one thing based on where situation. This is my first time joining. Thank you. Well, stick around. It only gets better. Leslie, off to a decent start.
Yeah. Let me give you the definition of belief and faith and expectation, which will give us a little bit of an infrastructure on, you know, I'm curious on how we develop it, right? Because so when we go to do something that we've never done before, we have a goal, a dream, something new that we haven't done before, we begin with an expectation, if you will, which in the dictionary says likely to occur. So we're kind of open, right? We don't know exactly how it's going to go, but we're going to give it, you know, the tie to the runner, so to speak. We have an expectation that it could happen. Then as we move toward whatever it is we're going toward, it can, like I said, it can be a goal, whatever it is. On the way, we begin to see signs, if you will, people and opportunities popping up on our path that seem to have the answers or know something about what we're doing. And I used to say, well, wow, that's a coincidence. But I invite you to consider that it isn't, which I won't get into. And then the definition of belief is I now have a firm opinion. So expectation is when you begin, when you start to see the signs of things that look like they're coincidence, right? Then you've moved into the definition of belief, which is now you got a firm opinion, okay, that it will occur. And then finally, when you complete, and absolutely action is a given, when you complete this thing that you wanted that you did not know how to do, and you actually completed it, that's when you have built faith, which is that you know that you know that you know it. And when you get to the point of faith, for most of us doing something we haven't done before, we've actually disproven an old belief that says we couldn't. Right. And so if you use the definition, our faith in God is pure faith. We know that we know that we know it. I can't talk you out of believing in your God or your concept of God. You can't talk me out of it. We know it. So we can actually create faith in our own ability and deservability, which really shoots an arrow in the foot of the old belief that you can't do it, you're not the one. So that's one way to look at the foundation of faith. And we've all done this, right? Haven't we, Neil? We've all gone through this process. The power here is in distinguishing how it happens and then replicating it, doing it again and again and again. And that's my take on those three definitions.
Great take. And you know, when I think of faith,
oh my God, Rhonda, look at this.
Okay.
Rhonda Deb, who only does 2 comments. I think we hit a
nerve. It's going sometimes.
I was gonna say.
But, you know, here's a new gentleman. I think I've seen Yamuna before. Glad to join here. Good morning from Bangalore. Good to have you. Maybe you know Renadeb. Individuals with faith in their abilities can exhibit resilience in the face of challenges. Going on, having faith in organizational objectives fosters commitment and dedication among employees. Another one, faith in team members builds a collaborative and supportive work environment. So yeah, faith has many benefits. Faith is foundational for building strong interpersonal relationships. It promotes trust, collaboration, a positive workplace atmosphere. Looks like we hit a nerve with you.
What I was saying, Neil, how about you? Oh, sorry.
Faith is different from many individuals, but in the end, all of us are going to that one reality, and that is God. Randy's here. Randy almost stopped by Leslie's last week, but I guess didn't.
Oh
Oh,
no, he did. He
oh, he
did.
came
He
by.
and yeah. He came and he ate the French toast casserole and
Good.
everything.
See, how do I know?
Yeah, there you
And
go.
here's Renata back. There are many past the faith. You know, again, you could run out of names and symbols for whatever you want to call
Mhm.
faith, but you have to have faith in yourself also. And I think that's important. You just can't depend on a higher force to be there when you're already there, right? When you can help yourself and not have to depend.
So
But
can we hear what kind of wanted to hear what Neil had to say
well,
about the three levels?
with the two, what if your faith in your abilities exceeds your capabilities? And that's an interesting thought. It's better to be overconfident, I think. I mean, it can be challenging as underconfident. But, you know, I think life balances everything out for you. So when you get too much of something, pretty soon you don't do enough and you lose half of it and you're back to balance. So Randy said, Donald, nothing to report on the New Year's Day meal. Leslie was afraid I was going to propose to her, I guess, and the kids just wouldn't be ready for her. Okay, see, you didn't want to get that. What? Must have been a different Randy because this Randy didn't get any direction. Okay, well, now that you're new to this whole program, Neil, uh, and you see the interaction, what can you do to make it even more valuable for the audience?
Yeah. So Leslie, just so we can review that, what are the three levels again?
Okay,
So,
expectation when you start something you haven't done, it's
right.
likely to occur. You're giving it a whirl. Then when you start to see the signs, you've done some of the work, right? And all of a sudden, an opportunity or people show up that seem to coincidentally know what you're doing or have the answer. Have you ever had that happen? That's when you move to belief. And now you've got a firm opinion that you will do this thing. And then when you finally do, right, that's when you have perfect faith in your ability to do something you haven't done before. It's a new belief, and that you are deserving. And it actually counters the old belief that you weren't the one, because you are, you did, you've proven it. Now you have perfect faith in yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And as we're teasing this out, I'm kind of thinking about like what's the difference between belief and faith? And for me, faith seems to be a higher frequency, right? It's an accumulation of evidence over time. But the thing that was most landmark in what you were saying, Leslie, is that I I feel like unlike belief, faith is something that you, like you said, you just know it. But how do you know it? For me, the way that I know something that I can have faith in is that I feel it in my body. It's not an intellectual process.
Right.
It's a whole body process. It's below the neck process. It's like, oh, I know, I now believe this. It becomes part of my DNA, my soma, my being, right? And like you said, there's not a convincing in faith. You don't modify somebody else's faith. It becomes rooted in who you are. Down to the every little portion of your body.
What's the physical reaction? I'm curious because you mentioned in your body, and I agree that it's sort of a whole physical mind, body, spirit knowing.
Right.
I mean, for me, I'll get goosebumps. What is the physical manifestation of, stepping over that line and knowing that you have perfect faith in that thing? What are some of the physical manifestations? Are there?
Yeah, I would say, and I obviously it's different for different people, but the
Sure.
way that I experience it, it's kind of like all of a sudden it's kind of like a wave that comes into me, right? It's an energy wave, or it's a feeling of it's feeling a physical elation, but it tends to be powerful, and it tends to excite me and relax me in the same breath, right? It's a like I'm lifted and I'm held, right? Something pulls me up, but it also opens me up at the same time, and I'm like it's sometimes an exhilaration, sometimes it's a relief. Sometimes it feels to have a great degree of weight. All of a sudden, you feel a weight come into your body. You're like, oh, I feel this, right? It pulls
So
you.
it stops you, it takes you into the present, right? It stops you in your tracks, so to speak. It gets your attention. That's like having a contraction, by the way, Neil. When you're having contractions, you've never had one, but let me assure you, it stops you in your tracks.
Sure.
Anyway, I'm sorry to digress, but I like that. I wonder what the audience thinks about, and Donald, what you think about this moment when you recognize that you're being held. I just love, listen, Neil has the most phenomenal philorical. He has this other one. Someday I'll get you to share with you them, the coming to center. He's got a lot of wonderful ones. I just love that, Neil. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you guys should create a show together.
Well, we had one last year, and now we have taken a different turn. We're still supporting each other, and I've got someone else, and he's doing other things, and we're perfectly open with changing partners.
Yeah, no, I think that's important because they have a philosophy or strategy in some businesses where they call it Hollywood hiring. And what you do is you hire a person for that project, right? You have a movie, you have a costume designer, you have a director. But when the movie's over, everybody goes to the next movie or the next show or goes home or whatever they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you get the most aligned, harmonious group, is when they're there for the same purpose. Instead of a lot of situations, you're carrying legacy into the future, right? Things that had a place, things that did something, but now it's a new project, it's a new day, and people are trying to put square pegs in round holes. And that makes it more challenging and less interesting. So I think of people, and just like the show is totally spontaneous, right? No script, no direction, no nothing. Wherever the next word is, that's where the next word's probably going to follow. And I think if you allow life to come to you in the moment, because too many people are overthinking, over planning. They got 8 steps and they haven't done the first one yet. So they don't even know what the first step is, let alone the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. So bringing it back to faith has to be also related to results.
Oh, absolutely. That's the whole way that we built faith. How did we build faith in God? Think about this. Through repetition, you were dragged or went willingly with your parents week after week after week after week. You sang the songs. You got excited at Christmas time, raising your frequency. So the frequency and the way you feel about it actually colors the kind of results you're going to have. So if you were always miserable in church and fussed and fight and got in trouble, your belief about church was that it wasn't a very comforting or a place to hold you. But if you, like most people, drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak, through repetition, through those high vibrations, you now have perfect faith in God. And no one can convince you. And then you start to see signs that proves that there is a higher power, that things are happening over which it appears we have no control.
Okay, sounds good.
One thing that I wanted to highlight that Don said I thought was really interesting, Don, is that you talked about, like, you just said the word briefly, but you talked about, overthinking. And I think one of the things that actually doesn't work in the vein of finding faith is is staying too much up in here, right? And I think one of the beautiful things that faith can do for us in our results, that was the other word that Don, is getting us into quick action. I notice people, even in the entrepreneur space, right? When they just have an idea, they just have faith in it. They have blind faith. Even people are telling them, like, what are you talking about? We don't see it. What are you seeing here? Sometimes they think they're delusional, but it's their faith in the idea and the rapidness that faith moves through the idea that often gets the results more than somebody who's like, let me just see, let me figure out, let me strategize, let me overthink it, right? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think it's interesting, and I think that, the opposite of faith may be fear, or an element of fear.
It is. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah. So if you look at when you are afraid, I mean, what stops people? Usually fear of the unknown, fear of, you name it, and put it there. But what is the fear really telling that person? Is they don't feel confident. They don't feel capable. They don't feel whatever they don't feel is what it's telling them.
That's right.
But 90% of all fears never come to pass, and 10% that do can't be controlled or planned for.
But they came from coming to pass. So yes, you're absolutely true. But the way we got our fears was through a series of experiences, being told you're not smart enough, getting an F on a report card. So you're absolutely correct. I would say 90% of fears do not come to pass. However, the reason you have that fear is because it did. And not only did it come to pass, but it came to pass a lot of times.
Yeah, but here's I think the offset is, let's say you're a young person and you're very influenced at that age, right? Because
we all are.
Yeah, I mean, they're new. There's big people and older people you think know something. So when they say something, it might be the first time you ever heard it, right? And maybe you embrace it. But if you could go back the way you are right now in that situation, none of that would have affected you, right?
Yeah.
You would have actually been in a superior position with experience to really instruct everybody who was creating this negative.
But you can't go back. So where we are now,
you inherited what you have.
That's right.
Right, because of your situation, not because of the merit of you deserving any of that.
That is absolutely correct.
Say it's been built on a false foundation, in a sense. I adopted somebody else's mindset, vision, perspective. That's what you do. You spend half your child learning stuff and hoping the other half you unlearn it, right? So you can replace it with the stuff you believe to be true. And I think that's where faith comes in too, when it's based on your belief system and not somebody else's. And I think the key is again, what do you want to do? And figuring out that, just knowing that will help you in your faith or confidence in the ability. And I think writing things down makes a big difference in developing faith, because sometimes till you see it, you say it's never going to happen. When you think it, you can conjure stuff. Well, here's a new person. Always love new people. Kane Jones. What an interesting name. Leslie, Happy New Year's. Sending XO back with what a beautiful three generations here on. Three. I thought I was the youngest.
I thought Neil was the youngest, and you and I are old.
Yeah. Overthinking is definitely my nemesis. Andrea says it paralyzes me. I so needed to hear this today. Thank you. Well, I think the answer to overthinking is getting action closer to your overthinking, right? If you don't have to wait too long to get something done, then you're not going to have to experience that. But getting back to the fear thing, a lot of times you manifest what you're trying to avoid by thinking about it, fearing it all the time. It almost kind of invites it in. Here's another Kane post with tremendous emoji impact. What a beautiful thing. Watching Wise. Thank you for the Betty. Wow. Have to read that tonight, all these emojis. So with that, Neil, what do you think?
You know, one thing that was coming up for me and what you guys were saying is that I say this often. It doesn't really matter what's true. It only matters what you're trying to prove. And at the end of the day, faith is a way we can basically quickly craft our own convention, our own reality, our own. Instead of, like you said, Don, we get a lot of experience in life, and then we start to consider that's what's true, and then we find more evidence of the things that have happened to us or our experiences. But faith is like this beautiful frequency. Like, hey, if you just decide that you need a new reality, faith can help you raise your frequency to create that quickly, right? And that's how we tend to think about it more in religion. But what about just your faith in your abilities, or your faith in a new business idea, or your faith in the fact that you can be a better father than your father was, or all those things, your faith that you can heal your body. Leslie knows I've gone down those roads as well. I healed the best when I just let go of everything that I had experienced and just had faith that I could heal.
Well, I think that's Leslie, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that's tabula rasa. So you can, what you reminded me of, Neil, is something that Brendan Bouchard went through, and many of us do. You actually clear out your beliefs, the old ones, and you have like a clean slate, tabula rasa, when you're in an emergency or close to death. So Brendan tells a story of a terrible car accident he had where he should have died, right? There was no, and it changed his whole life. So, faith is the only known antidote to fear, according to Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich. So the opposite of faith is fear. So the idea in the work that I do, right, with clients is to identify what is the belief saying that we already had. We all have these beliefs. We get them through repetition, auto-suggestion, hearing it in space, consistent increments over time. That's how faith is born, right? And so what happens here is that you can replicate the process that gave you the crappy beliefs, and that's what my work is the process to duplicate, right? Using the existing pattern. It's called biomimicry. I mean, that's how trains were fashioned after certain birds, etc. So the idea here is through the head, because I'm very much a head person and always challenged to the body part, right? But I got to figure it out. I calculated exactly what has to be done to duplicate that process. Now, that process takes years. So then how do you set a goal, as example, for something you haven't done, to disprove that you can't do these things? Because whenever you get a new idea, one of those old beliefs is going to pop up to say, Leslie, let someone else stick their neck out. You're not smart enough. You failed before. Nobody wants to hear from you. Most of our beliefs about ourselves are negative, and they are untrue, but they came from truth because you heard it over and it's the same concept of brainwashing. This is how a belief is created, a pure belief in your subconscious, or perfect faith. You have perfect faith in that belief that you can't do it.
Let me just jump in here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is that I'll just say, for me personally, one of the ways in which I create faith or create that belief quickly is just to visualize it. I did massive visualization for months and created massive healing and changes in my life. I've created so many things in my life through visualization. We're given this. All of a sudden, when you said it, this is sort of like, I never put the two together, but I think visualization is like an internal faith process, right?
It is, and it's triggered by your imagination. So the minute you get an idea, what happens is you get the idea, and that's effectively through intuition, right? Or whatever. It comes in through your five senses. You get this and instantly your imagination goes to work with visualization. As soon as you get the idea, you start to see it already. oh, it's going to be so much fun. You're driving up the physical vibration. I love that. Yeah, visualization is really the kingpin of manifestation, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think that's quite a comprehensive
Oh yeah, sorry.
overview of it. No, I think it's very, very.
We're the mindset guys. I can't help it.
I know. I'm trying. I try all the time. I know. But anyways, I'm so excited to see Mirjana from Serbia here. Hi from Serbia. I guess the flag today is a day of before Orthodox Christmas. So God and churches are with us these days. With you all the best. Thank you, Mirjana. And Mirjana comes back with faith is very important. And it has so much value. Why wouldn't you want to build your faith, right? Why wouldn't you want to add to your faith?
That's right.
If it's a strong influence, motivator, and I think what faith will allow people to do is stay in the game longer or long enough for the tide to turn. How many times you ever go to a meeting with someone or a speaker, and that speaker is going to have really good value to that person. And right before that person says everything that person you wanted to know, that person left to make a phone call or whatever and isn't even in the room. And it just missed it, right? And I think that's where people turn the light switch off when they go out of business or when they leave a home or whatever. Is they didn't have the fortification to stick it out another day, to hang in there, right? And it's just that one more day. I mean, I can tell you how many things, if I would have trusted my emotion, like you should just leave, right? You just should leave. They're 20 minutes late, you should get out of here, right? Or you're sitting on a Zoom and it's like 3 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes. It's like, hey, what's going on? And when I do leave, when I know if that person shows up, it's not going to be a positive experience for them, right? So I'd rather leave before that happens, because sometimes you just can't get right and feel right and act right and show right. So I think faith is a matter of when do you need it? When do you use it? How do you use it? If you're always depending on it, you're totally too dependent. Right? If you can do stuff for yourself and it gets done, you don't want more, you just want the same. And the next thing you do will be the next thing you do, no matter what you did the last time you did something. So I think if you're just in the moment, dealing with what comes to you, and I think having the faith in yourself that whatever it is, I can deal with it. Or put it this way, I can understand it. I don't know if I'll deal with it, because sometimes it's way over what you can do in the period of time or the amount of resources. But Linda's here. And if you don't know Linda, you should. Linda's here about every day. Lovely lady out there in rural America, raising kids, grandkids, great grandkids, finally quit spinning to join in the morning. I love about everybody, they got their little activities, and, no matter where they are or what they're doing, they're always doing something new, different, exciting. Randy says, wait, what? Doesn't matter if it's true. Was that a misstep? Well, they say a lie is as good as the truth if someone will believe it, and the truth is as good as a lie if no one will believe it. So I guess it's who you're talking with. Cynthia comes back with a comment. Thank you so much. It helped me. So insightful. Come back again. Tell your friends. Kane comes through, hanging tough. Good for you. Randy says, don't you feel that faith is a set of impressions that are largely gained from their parents or other significant adults in their life? For sure. But
exactly what it is.
You can have different faith in different things as you evolve, right? Things that you really believed in and cared about don't seem to have as much value as now new things that you care about. I mean, what turned you on at 16 isn't going to be something you're focused at 60. So I know, Leslie, you got so much to apply to faith. What's your next thought?
Well, there's some different words here, right? So the set of impressions, you have perfect faith in the things you can't do, right? True or not, Randy, it is true for you, what you believe, and we're distinguishing belief in a different way. Beliefs are persistent ways of being, and they're automatic, they're triggers, they're reactive, they're not really thinking. So the idea here is to outweigh them with faith, with reason, with using your conscious mind to come to center so that you have a choice. I had to use this as Neil's word, where, okay, so the real power becomes when you've created enough new beliefs in yourself by doing things you hadn't done before. Now you're able to make a choice. Am I going to react, which you may choose to do, or am I going to keep it zipped and do something different? Most people don't have the ability to stand in the center and make the choice because they're overloaded with the negative. So my work brings people to the place of building faith in their ability and deservability by completing things that make a difference, that they're compelled to do to serve, that they've not done, that they are afraid because they believe they can't and they've never done it before. And that's where a good coach or guide comes in to keep you on track and suggest different ways of thinking about the situation you're in. So the more ways, and then listen, for every goal, you've got a new neural pathway. And my limited understanding is that this is what allows us to choose, to hold our temper right in the moment, or to choose to hold it or to lose it. Neil, what do you think about this explanation? Now, understand this is my description of what's happening, right? To understand, out of confusion comes order. And we don't do anything when we're confused. We take no action when we're confused. The confused mind gets stuck. But as soon as there's a little light that comes in, as soon as we see something that, then we're willing to take that step. Neil, what do you think?
I love what you're saying, Leslie. In typical, I got a really unique thought that I'd love to get from you. It's a little bit right. But when we talk about faith, I have 8-year-old boy-girl twins. And so I observe them a lot because they remind me of what we were, what our powers are. And when I see faith in terms of those guys, they don't have the objection, right? If I give them something new to do, if they decide that they're going to walk, we go putt.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing times how quickly that when they do something the first time, they're really good at it because they just have complete faith in their abilities. In fact, faith is so pure in them because they don't have the objection, right? So
no fear. There's no fear really, or
right.
they're willing to fall down and bump their nose. It's the faith is stronger than any fear that they might have about falling off the bike or whatever. Would you say?
Yeah, and Don said it really well earlier. He said about, we spend first part of our life learning some things that we do, undoing. And for me, this part of my life, really, I don't feel like I need to learn so much more. Is that I need to start undoing some things so that I can return back to some of those roots of power that I had, earlier in life. It's like, how do I come out of
Can you really unlearn and undo? I'm not sure it's possible that the concept is to learn new to replace the old. Maybe it's just word, right? Maybe it's just syntax or words, but to unlearn, to unthink, that isn't possible. What we do is we learn new things and we do those things instead of the old things that don't serve us. Maybe both are right. I don't know.
I don't know. I think both can be right. I think, depending on the time of day. So, I think when it all comes around, again, is balance. How much time is thought in faith? How much time is acted on faith or with faith? And what are the results from your faith? How do you continue to believe in something that doesn't result in your desired outcome, right? How do you keep that faith up? And I think one of the answers is, the saying, if things are going to change, you have to change, right? You wake up one day, you feel like $1 million, the next day you don't feel so good, and you say, how'd the world change so quick? Right? It didn't. Not in relationship to you, at least directly. So, what do you do to exercise your faith? I mean, just like in the morning, I got to do my walking every day, because if I don't feel right. I feel sluggish. And you do some things because it saves you from having to do something even less desirable.
Yeah, that's true.
Someone says, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. Well, I don't like that, but I hate that. So you go along with the flow. But every time you gotta measure where you're at. What
I like about what you're saying, Don, and I believe in this as well. It's like we sometimes look at life coming at us, right? It's coming at us, but what I hear you saying is like we can do things through our rituals, through our habits, through we have capacity and dominion over, like, and shift our state so that we can have greater faith, right? We can have certain things that we can do, and some of that does fall squarely in our. It's like you don't wait for a light beam to come from heaven to put you into that faith mode. You do things as an active creator to create the namesake of faith and whatever you have going on.
Yeah, well, I think it's just like any other journey. You provision for it, right? So you decide, what do you need to complete the journey and be happy and satisfied and all the value that you get from it. And, there's a time where you just say, I'm not ready. I got to take some space, right? I got to sit down for an hour and think, right? I don't want to get into that group right now. And I think at that point, once you stage your faith and your belief and your actions, everything should be just the way you want it. Just like if you're going to cater a meal, right? You'd figure out the menu and whatever, and then you'd expect that to come true. I think people's lives, they're responding and reacting instead of being proactive. Keeping their eye on the road, being right. Because, when you're driving a car, right, you're going 70 miles an hour on a highway, you're not looking at the wildlife. You're not looking at the landscaping. You're looking at the car in front of you and what's going on. So,
Hopefully.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to get yourself probably in some sort of trouble with someone else. So I think you have to figure out, what is expectation, what's intention, what's result, and how is this measuring up in reality, right? And either you lower your threshold for success. Because when do you say I'm a failure? When do you say my faith failed me, or I don't have any faith? And at that point, you got to ask yourself, hey, was it really me? Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's all you, and I think that's where people the accountability comes in. It's like, hey, either way, I was a goner, right? It didn't really matter. So if I'd have taken that route, I would end up in the same place. And you know what the thing is? Everything is what it is. And it's how long you want to dwell on it, what you want to add to it, what you want to take away from it. And meanwhile, you're stealing your present, affecting your future. And now all of a sudden that legacy is starting to overwhelm what could have been an opportunity. So now you're paying 2-3 times for something that's already been satisfied in some way. So Neil, what do you think about, well, here's Linda. She's got a big one. Faith can be from adults, but no, my mom was upset by hypocrites at church. So she stopped growing her faith community, but never told me. And no, now it happened to me and never told her. But realized I allowed someone to stop growing. And you don't know what you don't know, but once you find out, you should be happy that you at least you know better now. Welcome. Randy comes back with, I had faith I was going to eat French toast on Tuesday. He doesn't give that up, huh? Why don't you send him a package of French?
I've got some in the freezer. I was going to run get it and show it to him.
Yeah, he can
because
have
he-
three, so you don't have to. He don't have to drive
Okay.
all that way this time.
Okay.
I'll do a French toast run, Randy. So, and I think the other part about faith is enjoy it, have fun with it. I think everything in life is worthy of having some laughter, a couple smiles. It's the seriousness of faith that turns people off sometimes, where you got to be a stoic, or you got to be something, where I think faith is something you should embrace all week long, all year long. It's not when you're down on your knees and you don't know what to happen. That joke where the guy was going to drown. There was a big flood and he kept going to higher water and eventually couldn't get any higher.
Yeah.
And a rowboat came by and said, "Jump in, I'll save you." And he said, "No, God will take care of that. I don't need
Right.
And meanwhile, two more boats came by and he turned them down. And he finally died, went to heaven. And he said, "God, why didn't you save me?" And God said, "I sent those three boats for you." So
You didn't recognize it.
yeah. So sometimes you're waiting for something that's so defined that there's other things around that will do the same thing, and you take the best you can with what you have. Randy, here's Randy with his, I'd rather exercise to prevent disease than exercise to recover from one. That's so true, because sometimes you're better off taking the cure as the prevention, right? If it's going to save you after you get it, maybe it'll prevent you from getting it. And I think that's important. So, if everybody blesses themselves in so many ways to say, "You're okay, I'm okay, there's always tomorrow." As long as you can believe in there's always tomorrow, and tomorrow could be the day, right? Because things fall apart some ways and you never understand how it could happen so quick and surprising. And then sometimes something shows up from out of the blue and you don't understand that either. And sometimes it's important not to understand everything, but to accept what's given to you and let time take its course. So Leslie, your turn.
Okay, my turn. So when I was a little girl, back in the dark ages, the mothers stayed home and the dads went to work. The back doors were open. Any mother could reprimand any child. If you were over at someone's house and you misbehaved, that mom would reprimand you. This was sort of a perfect faith in our way of life. When I was a little girl, we did the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America every day. Every day for 12 years. I believe in this country. Today marks 3 years since our country was under attack, killing people.
Okay, Leslie, we're getting.
Hang on. No, I know, but this is important.
To get into political stuff, or
no, we're not. Don't.
Okay,
Okay, so
move back to faith.
let me finish. I still believe in a democracy and this country because it was so ingrained in me. I have perfect faith. And so anyone who's been through this, right, every day, you have a belief that this works. So I would remind people to take a moment today in the United States and in the world to consider what this day represents. And according to what Donald always shares, what action will you take? Well, I want to keep this particular belief. I don't want to have a new faith in a new way of life. So I wanted to say this because not saying it is stepping over.
No. Here's where I'm coming from, Leslie. Is some things can be shared and benefited in real time. Other questions and divisive elements or issues will never be solved. And everybody, if we're talking about faith in the beginning, everybody has their definition of what that is. Some people have no faith, and that's what their faith is. And to be able to bring people together is the key thing.
And that's exactly how our country was formed. In fact, if you think about the Declaration of Independence, there were 33 men, this is simply historical fact, who risked their lives. They knew that if they could not get this country started, that every one of them could be hung. And so, the reason this is important, this is not right wing or left wing. This is honoring.
I understand, but once you say right wing or left wing, you've now gotten that part of it in. And
well, I don't want to step over this, and I believe it's up to me to say this, that I want to keep my faith. It proves exactly how you got your faith to begin with, through repetition, through, knowing those moms were there, right? If someone wasn't home, you could run to someone else's house. That is the faith that I was raised with, and I like it. I'm good with this faith.
Fine, and everybody should have their own faith. And everybody should have the benefit of finding whatever that faith is and basing it on whatever they want to base it on. There is no right or wrong to foundation to a person.
Well, there are right things. There are doing things right, and then there are doing right things.
But again, it's depending on who has that definition.
Well, that's just like saying there are good people on both sides of the insurrection.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying there's so much benefit that can be derived, but what brings people together, what people have universal belief in to work with, than trying to fill a gap that's never been able to be filled by more people, smarter people than we are in any way. And all it does is separate more, because there's also the element of no absolutes. So where is the
I'd like to hear from Neil in the audience on what I said, rather than discounting what I said, to actually consider the element of faith.
No, Leslie, okay? You said what you said. I just want to move on.
Excellent. But I'd like to hear what Neil has to say, or what the audience has to say.
Whatever, I'm here to hear.
Okay, Neil.
So for me, all that came up, and it's not anything really to do with what was said, is that when I think about this, is like, I think that faith is here. If we have true faith, it's here to help us evolve. It's here to help us evolve. It's one of the best forces of evolution that's probably underutilized. And for me personally, it's a lubricant in my life. Gratitude is for the present, and faith for me is for the future. And that's the way in which we evolve. And so if wherever we're at, on whatever stage, world or locally, we can use that faith. We allow the faith to develop us and to have freedom of faith. It's going to help us evolve, but it's never on the timeline or the way in which we expect it, right? It's going to be, some of it's bumpy, some of it's rocky, some of it's beautiful, but it is a formative force, and we should encourage people to into precipitating. Oh my goodness!
Either one.
Participating in this wonderful aspect of being a human being, right? And we just need, we're not trying to get people back into a particular faith. I think what we were trying to get them is to actually be in the process of faith more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Values, standards, and ideals. That's what we're always coming to. What do we value? What are our standards? What are our ideals? And I simply was just saying that I loved pledging allegiance, singing the song, and living with the back doors open. That I would love that.
I don't think anybody has a question about.
Yeah.
So with that, we're almost 54 minutes into the show. We've got about 5 minutes left. Linda says, Randy, yes, no, I had that journey. I'm thankful found fuel to live past expiration date to make many more moments into memories. And, I think what's so important is gratitude. That when your faith does come through for you, when your faith in yourself does deliver, to celebrate, to be grateful, to acknowledge, because that's a repetitive, fortifying influence, right? To get in trouble, get out of trouble, and not understand how that ever happened or be grateful for whoever helped you through it is not going to benefit you the next time you get into that situation. I think the other thing is if you don't have a faith in yourself enough, maybe you can lean on somebody else's faith, right? And I think that's so important is community, congregation. That's what we say here all the time. If you can't do it, could we do it? Maybe I've got the missing piece, right? That I got more than enough of. Just like if someone came next door for a cup of sugar, right? You give them the whole bag for as much as you use it or as inexpensive it is, but you're honored that you could help somebody complete their pie or whatever they were making with that sugar. And I think that's important. The little things you do, not just the momentous all or nothing life or death situations, but things where you just say, hey, I ran a little faster today. I got a little bit more accomplished today. And over time, little things compound in a very positive way. So coming up on end of the hour, Leslie, you want to give your closing words?
Sure. I'm so glad that you were here, Neil. I hope that you enjoyed this. I like to be present and being present to where my clients live and their trials and tribulations and their challenges with fate wherever they are. And so I will continue to have faith in what I do, what you do, Neil, what you do, Don, and I will also stand for the little girl who was taught to believe that life could be really good, and I want to keep it that way. So I'll leave you with that.
Neil, first time on the show. What's your experience?
Well, I enjoyed it. For me, I'm leading into faith in this year from a state of just belief in myself. And I think you said it best, Don, there as well, and Leslie said something similar as well. It's just like, if you don't have it, borrow it, manufacture it, brew it up, make tea of it, sit in a circle, wherever you can find it, congregate. But it's about, for me, faith ultimately is, can I operate at my highest frequency every day? Can I find my highest frequency? And if I'm not there, what tools do I have to get back there quickly, right? Because the muscle that we're all trying to develop in this pursuit of life isn't this constant, I'm constantly growing. That's unrealistic. We're always in expansion and contraction. But can I reduce the time it takes me once I lose it to get back to where I was? That's the muscle. And I do believe that faith has a large capacity to do that.
Well, that's terrific. And it sounds like you fully are sincere in your belief in that. And I think that's encouraging for those people out here in the audience and future audiences who may take that as a opportunity to enhance their faith and at least maybe believe again. Some people had faith, lost their faith, or gave it up because they didn't feel it delivered for them, right? And eventually it became like a negative, that people would not acknowledge. And some people buying that back again, and maybe it's through other people, maybe it's through a positive experience. But what it does say is we're living in a dynamic world that changes faster than ever. And you need all the tools you can to master the race here as best as you can. I think faith is an instrument and a tool most people can take better use of if they practice it, right? If they invest in it and they work at it. So it's not a given. Like, you can't just wish something. If you don't exercise, it probably won't happen. So with that said, thank you, audience. Come back tomorrow. Tomorrow's a very interesting show. We've got, let me see, Jackie Scully, who's been here before. She's an educator, and Denise Drinkwalter, who's been here a couple times, who's a close friend of Beverly. So with that said, appreciate your participation. It's been a great show, and have a wonderful, faithful day.